Hey, everybody, we are back. We missed last week. Sorry about that. Jen was in Ottawa for a conference and I was too busy. So we just decided to take a week off, but we're back. Jen, I want to start actually by mentioning something to you that's funny. And we'll get into the dispatch in a minute, but I've wanted to tell you this for days, but I haven't been able to find an opportunity because I wanted to do it on video. So I had told someone recently, a colleague, but not someone who's media, really deep into the media, that I was going to be talking with my partner, Jen Gerson, later. And also that you're going to be in Toronto in a couple of weeks and that you and I were just going to get together, and which is exciting. We haven't actually been face to face in about 5 years.
Yeah.
And the person I was talking to said that they know you, they follow you on Twitter, that you're a great writer. And they also said that you're so beautiful. And I was a little taken aback by that, but I was just like, yep. Yep, she's beautiful.
Sure. That's nice to hear gorgeous. After 2 kids. Yeah, nice to hear after 2 kids, let me tell you. I've been like going out shopping for clothes. It's not been a fun adventure for me.
So as the conversation continued, she mentioned a couple of other times, you're beautiful, you're lovely, how did we meet? And then I started to realize, oh, I said partner.
No.
I didn't specify like business partner, co-editor.
Partner.
I just said my partner, Jen Gerson, and she knew you and was stressing to me how beautiful you were. And I ended up being like, no, you realize like my wife is over there. Like she's just the other. That's my wife. Like that's her over there. And by the way, my wife is also beautiful.
Also extremely beautiful. You've done very well for yourself, Matt.
Well, thank
you.
But it took me about 2 minutes into that conversation to realize, oh, she keeps saying you're beautiful because she thinks you're my partner. So
right.
No. I was able to clarify that. But if there's any rumors out there.
No, I am only your work wife and at a distance at that. On that note, I would like to note that you have not wished me happy birthday once, work husband.
I don't know when your birthday is.
It's today.
What?
Yes, I'm 38 today.
Do you have Facebook notifications set up for your birthday?
Probably not. I don't really care. It's fine.
Okay, first of all, happy birthday, work wife. You're beautiful. But so I had to just do a full update on my computer overnight. Just needed some software updates, and I'm currently locked out of my Facebook because to get into my Facebook, I need 2-factor authentication, which is on another device, and one of my kids is borrowing that device today. So I can't get into Facebook. So if happy birthday, I will make a note of this in my phone.
I found 2 gray hairs yesterday. 2. It's beginning. It's fine. Everything's fine.
That's cute. All right, let's talk. Speaking of youth, I want to throw this at you here. I thought this week that I might write a column about baby formula, which is a weird thing to write a column about. I want to tell you why I did not write a column about this. You will understand this, but just for the listeners and the readers and the viewers, every once in a while, there is a topic that comes up that someone like you or I, a columnist, will look at and will go, this is a really hot news story and it's genuinely interesting. And then we'll learn about it, we'll circle around it, and then we'll decide it's not actually a column. It's got to be a straight news report. It's got to be an investigated piece.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I still might do that. But I realized the more I looked into this, the less interest I had in opining on it. Like I just don't have anything to say about it that I think. But what is happening is that North America wide, there is a shortage of baby formula, including especially some special formulas for babies that might have health conditions or allergies. And I believe as well, this is also impacting other nutritional products for those who are, for instance, dependent on feeding tubes and things like that. Mm-hmm. So first of all, let me just mention to you 2 things to sort of buttress this. First of all, my first indication of this was purely in the realm of anecdote. And it was a couple of months ago, but I was on the phone with a friend and I happened to catch her while she was grocery shopping with her baby. And I gave her a call about a work-related matter. And she said, I can't find formula. She's like I'm in the grocery store and I'm going up and down and I can't find formula. And eventually she told me she was able to find some, but she had to go to a couple different stores and she couldn't find the formula her son is used to. Luckily, he's a good eater. It wasn't a big deal. He made a transition, but that kind of stuck in my brain. when my kids were little, like both my kids were entirely formula fed, and I used to have nightmares that
Oh
I
yeah.
couldn't find formula. Like that was the
Oh
kind of one
yeah.
of my weird parental anxiety nightmares, when especially when my kids were little. And my wife always sort of looks askance at my prepper inclinations already, but she never knew this. But I stashed in both the house and cottage some of the big bins of formula.
Yep. I did the
Um,
same.
yeah, and they were just hidden because I didn't want a hassle from my wife, and they expired eventually. I threw them out because we didn't need the formula anymore. But I just had in the back of my mind, and this was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, pre-supply shocks. I was just imagining not being
What
able to
if?
feed my kid.
Yeah, and I had my baby, a second baby, Elizabeth, in 2019, right before COVID.
Mm,
And one of the first things we did, because of course I've never been able to breastfeed, which is definitely more detail than you need about me. I'm beautiful though.
you are beautiful.
But anyway, so my kids have always been formula fed, exclusively formula fed. And the prospect of not being able to feed my kids was so horrific that when COVID happened, it was one of the first things we started stockpiling. We were just like crazy. So the formula stuff is interesting, not only because of the sheer gut level terror that evokes in me as a newish mom now. So new mom. But at the same time, I think I recall hearing something to the effect of like formula was one of those linchpin items that indicated that there was a serious problem in just the overall supply chain, and that things were going to start cascading from there. When you start not being able to find formula, perk up, because that usually indicates that there's something going really weird with the supply chain, and you should start paying attention to it.
So what has actually happened, and I will write a piece about this eventually. I don't know if it'll be an interview with someone or if it'll be a reported piece, but the line will eventually, maybe the next week or two, I'll get something about out about this. Maybe it'll even just be in the dispatch, kind of on top of what we're going to mention in today's dispatch. There's one facility in the United States that had some salmonella contamination, and they shut it down. And this is a facility that produces, I don't know the percentage amount, but a huge amount of the North American supply of either formula itself or some of the inputs for formula. I'm not sure yet. But it produces it from multiple brands. So you might be like, well, if I can't find this brand of formula, I'll get this one. All coming from the same facility. And that facility has been idled for months. And I rolled my eyes a little bit earlier this week, not because I don't think this is not a funny issue, and I'm not making jokes about this, but I saw an American journalist, a woman, tweeting that Biden must do something, Biden must fix this. That's not how supply chains work. Like, there is no federal strategic formula reserve. Like, it's not like the US Navy has bunkers full of formula that they're just sitting on because they're jerks. This is stuff that is produced and then it is consumed. And a big part of the productive capacity in North America has been knocked offline for months. Canada, as far as I can tell, and this is just based on my early work around this, because I need to do more on this, is not feeling it as much. Some states in the US, the formula supply is wiped out. And some babies can pivot to breast milk. Some babies can be accelerated onto solid foods maybe a little bit earlier than is optimal. Some babies can't. Like, this is primal, right in my lizard brain. This is terrifying.
Get the guns out. Like,
if you
baby
can't
gonna
feed
die.
babies, I don't know what we're doing here. So anyway, I'm going to mention that in the dispatch, basically flag it as a heads up, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, the other thing I would just ask is, like, is there any option of just hitting up the Europeans for European baby supply?
I don't know for sure, but I do know that Health Canada, or I think it's Health Canada, whoever does nutritional guidance, I don't remember who that is, already has a guidance out, and I've bookmarked it. So I'll when I get around to writing something where they're asking import regulators to have like flexibility on import requirements for getting this stuff in. So I think there's been some bureaucratic response, but this is, I mean, we talk sometimes about supply chains or the on-demand economy, just-in-time deliveries. There is not, in North America at least, there isn't some guy who can go to, oh, well, okay, well, you make baby formula now. It's like, no, there's a few very specialized facilities that do this. And when one of the big ones goes down, there's not enough formula for all the babies in North America. So, like, the dystopia snuck up on us really, really quickly. Okay, I'll turn this over to you now. Do you want to do NDP first, or want to do Bitcoin first?
Well, I have to do NDP point because I think I want to do a Bitcoin column, but like, we've been talking about doing Bitcoin for a really long time and getting an expert, and it's really hard to find an actual expert who doesn't come off as a bit of a kook on some of this stuff. So I
Yep.
think I want to write a column that's an idiot's defense of Bitcoin. And that is, I think that some people in there, firstly, the whole concept of Bitcoin has been so ridiculously tribalized, right? It's the expert elite consensus hates Bitcoin versus like the libertarian dude bro contingent who are
Yeah.
committing suicide, writing suicide letters on Reddit because Bitcoin's lost 30% of their value.
Which is
So
a
like
real thing.
nobody's,
That's
which
really
is a real
happening.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really happening. So I think this process, I think people have kind of lost sight of both what Bitcoin is, its downsides, and also its potential.
Yeah.
So I think I would want to do an idiot's guide to Bitcoin from my perspective, but I kind of want to hold my role, still my role on that one, because I think that's a column. I don't think that's a dispatch. Um, what I did think could be a column, but I think now is more probably a dispatch, is we were talking about some of the harassment that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh
Mhm.
took in Peterborough this week, right?
Yep. Just about a couple, like an hour and a half north of Toronto, a medium-sized Ontario city. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got hounded and harassed by a bunch of these crazy sort of freedom convoyer types, right? And he handled himself with quite a lot of grace. But you and I were talking about it, realizing like this is the first time that Jagmeet Singh's been in the news since he signed the supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals. Like the NDP's just not been.
They vanished.
They vanished.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Liberals are in a position where they are running very much like majority government and in all the worst possible ways. They recently just granted a DPA to SNC. Remember that big controversy?
I think that was a Quebec court, but they had to use the federal legislation to do it.
That's right. When the federal legislation just got passed in the last budget. So the lever is now there. They've totally botched the frames of reference on the Emergencies Act inquiry to skirt any kind of real accountability on why
I don't think they botched it. I think they did a great job with the frames of reference that skirts accountability.
Yeah, great. Good job. I mean, again, where's the NDP on this? What was the other one? Oh, you and I had two more. We'd come up with two. What are the other two ones?
Okay, NDP had the health transfer. The feds announced a boost to the health transfer of exactly $2 billion, which is the equivalent of sending like hospitals like a box of like Paw Patrol Band-Aids.
Yeah, exactly.
So here you go.
Health transfer, and there was another one as well. Oh God, what is wrong with me? Brain work.
Well, you're older now.
I know.
Okay, so I mean, the NDP has been missing in action on.
They've been missing in action, and meanwhile, like the Liberal government is basically running like the worst of the majority. Oh, the Winnipeg lab stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think that's just been completely mothballed. We're never going to find out why those Chinese scientists basically got fired from the Winnipeg lab. It's just never going to come out now.
No, it's not. It's ours to. Not ours to question why or
not ours to question why or wonder why. That's what are you, some kind of, anyway. And this I mean, arguably was one of the reasons why we went into an election last year, right? In order to basically allow the Liberals to get out of real accountability on that. They were willing to go to some considerable lengths to anyway. So the point is, there's some dodgy stuff going on. There's some really questionable stuff going on. We absolutely need to have strong opposition. And the NDP, because they've signed this confidence agreement and sold themselves for like a trinket, like a fairly nominal, dental program, are just, have completely screwed the pooch and are squandering their opportunity to be this really potent opposition figure in government. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are the Conservatives. They're a disaster right now. So like a lot of this stuff is just not really getting the scrutiny and care that it absolutely needs. Any one of these things might be an absolutely huge government destroying scandal, but the NDP are like, yeah, no, we got a dental program. That's enough for us. I mean, to me, this is just the NDP in its entire mindset in a nutshell. If they had actually gotten what they deserve, they should be running a coalition government with seats in cabinet, with real power, with real access to the civil service, with real access to the bureaucracy. And instead, it's just like, no, we got a dental program. That's enough.
I think the absurdity of this is that, well, first of all, it's not that they weren't warned. I mean, the moment this deal came out, people like you and I and a bunch of other observers, particularly those who've paid any attention to British politics, or even the Ontario NDP, the BC Greens, the junior partner always comes out of this badly. And I, in a dispatch we wrote at the time, I alluded to something a wizened old political operative said, and it's uncouth and it's un-PC, but basically he said, being the junior partner in one of these arrangements is being the mistress to the married man. When he gets what he wants out of you, one day you will find yourself dumped at the curb and you'll feel stupid. And all your friends could have warned you it was going to end that way, but you thought it would be different this time. It's never different. It never ends up being different. And the NDP signed this deal, and on paper, Jagmeet Singh has enormous power and influence right now. In reality, he's vanished. And I know exactly how my earnest NDP friends would spin this. I'll go, oh yeah, but we're getting work done. We're getting work done for Canadians. Okay, sure, yeah. And even if that's true, Canadians will reward the Liberals. Canadians will, every bit of credit Canadians may wish to give a government or a party, I should say, for anything that happens under this compact will go to the Liberals, not to the 100%. NDP.
And honestly, why would you even, if they're just going to run government like this without any clear opposition anyway, then what's the value out of running NDP anyway?
Exactly.
What's your value of voting for them?
And meanwhile, there's this incredible opportunity for there to be a grown-up opposition party, because the Conservatives have self-selected out of that. So that's a huge opportunity for them to be doing something, the NDP, but they're not. The only other thing on my radar this week, it's been a week dominated by news stories kind of from other jurisdictions. Still a lot of stuff happening in Europe, stuff happening a lot in the United States. We don't have a ton to say about that right now. I would just add, I had primal scream therapy this morning, and I wrote a column for TVO, the Ontario Public Broadcaster, where I'm a columnist. I write twice a week for them. I'm going to have to find a way to rewrite this for the Dispatch that isn't just totally plagiarizing myself or TVO, but oh my God, Toronto City Council needs to be disbanded. It needs to be, and I want to be very clear.
Doug Ford tried to do?
Pardon me?
Isn't that what Doug Ford tried to do?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because, all right, look, I want to be very clear before I make my comment remarks. I am only referring to all of this in a political sense. I'm not wishing violence on anyone, but fire all of them into the goddamn sun. Put them onto a rocket ship and blast them into the center of the solar system. Metaphorically or politically speaking. Exactly. So a couple of weeks ago, actually over the last couple of years, there have been some companies in Toronto that want to have pedal pubs. You've seen these things. They're the big multi-person bikes that have a little bar.
They look terrible, but that's fine.
They look ridiculous. But basically you get like eight or 12 people all pedaling, and there's like 6 in a row, and they're facing each other across the table, and there's a driver, and these guys pedal along. And in the United States, and in Calgary, I think in Alberta, you can be drinking a beer in a sippy cup, like a plastic cup, and you're drinking a beer and you're pedaling and you go from brewery to brewery. It's a day tourism thing. Like I was just in the US, and I don't remember if it was in Charleston or Savannah, but it was in one of those cities where I saw a pedal pub going along. And I remember specifically thinking to myself, Toronto would never allow that. Like, is it like we would look at that and we'd go, you can't do that. Actually, Toronto approved a pilot project where 2 companies would be issued 4 licenses each. And the province has passed enabling legislation that will permit these things to happen. They came up with definitions and insurance requirements. So all of the behind the scenes regulatory stuff was in place. And Toronto passed a pilot program for 8 licenses, 4 each to 2 companies to operate pedal pubs. You can't drink on them, but you can take them from venue to venue.
What's the point if you can't drink on them?
It's a vehicle on a public thoroughway, Jen. You can't have alcohol. Anyway,
but the driver's not drinking.
I know it's completely stupid, but here's where we are. So that's really stupid, right? But that actually counts as progress.
Okay.
And then at City Council this week, the pilot project was deferred. They want more reports. They want to think about this some more before we push ahead. And then, coincidental to this, one of Toronto's councillors, Josh Matlow, yet again raised in council the idea of amending or deleting the city bylaw that forbids consumption of alcohol in public unless it's in a regulated environment, like a beer tent or a venue or a patio or something like that. Like, go to the park, open a beer, and drink it. Currently, Toronto, officially, it's illegal. And by a vote of 17-2, City Council has asked for a report on whether or not Toronto should do this. And the report is due next winter, I think. I don't, actually strike that. I don't remember exactly when it's due, but it won't be this summer. And one of the very progressive Toronto city councilors, Jack Layton's son, Mike Layton, took to Twitter and he said, look, I support drinking in parks, but staff had concerns about the process. What the fuck? Like that should be the headline. It's just like, what process? Change the law. It is now legal to consume a drink in a public park in Toronto. And if anyone's breaking the law, if there's bad behavior, if there's noise complaints or rowdiness or public intoxication, that's illegal anyway. And we have a police force. And Layton tried to defend this position because he's taking it on all sides on Twitter, and he tried to defend it by saying, yeah, but come on. I mean, like, we've de facto kind of already let it go. There were only 2 tickets issued by bylaw officers last year. That makes it worse. That makes it worse because like we're not even asking for moral courage. We're not asking for leadership. We're asking for honesty. The city of Toronto has, by stealth and de facto, legalized drinking in public venues, basically by zeroing out enforcement. But actually amending the law to recognize this is, for our elected leaders and the staff, a bridge too far.
Well, then but isn't that just Canada in a nutshell?
It's true. I mean, it's Toronto in particular.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I am an affluent white dude with a backyard and a cottage. I can drink outside whenever I want. I'm also possessed of enough social capital that I know I can go to any park in the neighborhood and I can openly drink a beer. What are the bylaw? I mean, the worst case scenario is bylaw officers come and write me a ticket and I pay it. This is not aimed at me. This is aimed at poor people who don't have backyards. It's aimed at poor people or even middle-class people who don't have cottages. And it's aimed at young people of color who would not be nearly as confident as I would be in any encounter with any state authority that I'm not going to end up tasered in the back of a car. Toronto City Council's progressives are the most conservative people in the world because they are terrified of change. And that is why, metaphorically and politically speaking, fire them all into the sun. You mentioned Doug Ford and what he had done. So a couple of years ago, to enormous controversy, Doug Ford cut in half the number of city council seats in Toronto. He aligned the city of Toronto's electoral grid with the provincial and federal riding boundaries. I think there might be some differences, but that was basically the idea. Cut it in half and streamline government and get things done. That was controversial, and I didn't support Ford when he did that, but I didn't support him because he did it when the campaign was already kind of underway. Like, don't blow up an election in the middle of an election. I thought that was anti-democratic, but the idea of it, if we could zero out Toronto City Council to one person who was randomly selected by like grabbing a guy off the subway on the TDC that morning with a big like butterfly net, and just have like city staff grab this random person and they are city council for that day after they get over the shock of being abducted, we would be better governed.
On one thing I will say, and this isn't exactly in Doug Ford's defense, but there is a degree of Doug Ford derangement syndrome, particularly among Ontario progressives, I've noticed. A difference between, he's kind of a bit of a fuckwit and he screws up and he disappears and he's made all kinds of mistakes, and Doug Ford is a Trumpian demagogue who's going to destroy the blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference between those two things. And I do remember that when he cut city council, and I agree with you. I think that I don't disagree with him cutting city council from 40 odd people to 20. That was always insane. However, the process and the way he went about it was definitely anti-democratic and wrong. And also everything about it
was
spoke
vindictive
to a degree of vindictiveness, right? Yeah. Vindictiveness. That said, and I remember like people were literally like trying to break down walls during the protest for all of that for a couple, days. Then people got over it. Everyone's over it now.
I said in the column I wrote for TVO that I will be a one issue voter if any of the major political parties pledges to disband the Toronto city government and reconstitute it from scratch. I would vote for that party.
I think that I think that there's no end of primal screaming into the sun on this particular topic, and you should definitely do that. Not least of which because it gives the rest of us in Canada something to laugh at you for. Your city really is kind of terrible.
It's a great city with great people. It is badly run and no one cares. And I've said this before about Ontarians in particular. I think this applies to Canadians. Let me give you the hierarchy here. Canadians are bad, Ontarians are worse, and Torontonians are the worst. Because life is so good, we don't get angry about things we should get angry about.
Yes.
And there are things that we should be angry about. There's things we should do better at. There's things we should demand change. But it's a beautiful day and the patios are open and the barbecues are going. And
I can get my baby formula.
And that's exactly it. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to go pick up my kids from school, and they're healthy and well fed and reasonably well educated. And they're going to pool parties today. I'm going to be at the cottage tomorrow. We're having a barbecue. I got a fridge full of beer and delicious food. And all these things I should be angry about and demanding change about. Yeah, but I mean, this is
to fade away.
They just fade away. And Canadians are bad. Ontarians are worse. Torontonians the worst of all. So I remember saying to Chris Selly, the National Post columnist years ago, that every time I walk into an LCBO, the Ontario liquor monopoly store, I'm like angry it exists, but then I'm like, hey, woo, sale. Or hey, wow, this is new product.
And then you're drunk an hour later. So, you're angry. It's like giving birth. It's terrible terrible when you're doing it. And then, 5 minutes later, you have a baby, and a year later, your husband impregnates you again.
Story of my life.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean,
that's my partner, Jen Gerson.
So we have another, I think, 2 items coming in from a couple of our friends and buddies. Allies. Yep. So I think that is actually if I can do a decent job on the NDP thing, that's actually a pretty meaty dispatch, even though it's going to be a fairly...
I think you can do a decent job. I think you can even do a good job. Set your sights higher.
I'll try. More than just a pretty face, a beautiful face.
Yeah, but you are that. You are that, but more.
Okay, got to stop now.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, I can't think of anything else. What else? I mean,
everything else this week was in Europe or the United States. It's a quiet week in Canada.
Ukraine, I don't think we have anything else to say about abortion.
No, I mean, the only other thing is the Ontario election, but I have nothing to add on that. Like, we did a primer on the Ontario election, I think it was last week, and there's been a couple bozo eruptions. The words slave auction are now part of Ontario political history, so that's great. Some bozo eruptions, but
if Doug Ford wins again, can I go on Twitter and be like, I guess he was fine?
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, here's the thing. Like I said this in our dispatch. I think it was either last week or the week before. If Doug Ford wins again, especially as of right now, he's tracking basically. Look, you gotta be careful with margins of error, but it's very possible he holds his current level of majority. He could even add a couple of seats. He might also lose a couple of seats, but it's within the realm of possibility that he's going to win with a bigger majority. It would be the textbook definition example of
failing up.
Twitter's not being real life, because you go on Twitter and it is Doug Ford is an abomination. You look at any Ontario opinion poll, Doug Ford on track. Doug Ford is fine. On track for a majority. And you know what? Someone said something to me interesting, and it was off the record, so I'll be vague about it. It wasn't a journalist. It was just a guy who found out I was a journalist and said, "Yeah, I read some of your political writing." He goes, "Do you know that I've known Doug Ford for years?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." He said to me, "You know why he fails as a politician?" And I went, well, I mean, I have my theories. The guy said to me, "Because he's a salesman. Like in his business life, he's a salesman." And Ken Bosencool, our buddy, was on TVO recently, and he said Ford is not a conservative; he's a customer service politician.
Yes,
And
that's
I
right.
think both these guys are saying the same thing, but differently.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Ford has a habit of radical flip-flops. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because he doesn't actually have an agenda he wants to accomplish. There's not a goal in mind.
There's no
Like,
there, man.
there's no there
Like,
there. He's not trying to do anything except please whoever he's talking to at that moment.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know people get mad about this. They're like, well, what about the autism program? Or what about all these people that he's offended? Or what about like this group or that group? If you locked Doug Ford in a room with the autism parents or any of the other special
Give
interest
him
groups,
anything he wants.
he would give them anything he wants. And then he might go back on it later because
Yeah.
someone else would then get him and yell at him to do something else. But in the moment, Doug Ford's reflexive instinct is, I want to please you. And it's pathetic because leaders need to actually believe in something and have a plan. But Ontario. That's all I got. You want to call it here?
Let's call it here. I think that's good.
Okay, well, good to get these back. Sorry we missed last week's. We won't make a habit of missing them. The only other thing I would mention, Jen, is that there's the possibility that we are heading into silly season, like when the summer begins in Canadian politics.
Yeah, we are going to have to take some time off in summer as we did last year. So
we need a break, and there's not going to be anything to talk about.
There's not going to be anything to talk about, but that's still June away. So
that's about a month away.
Yeah. Let's plan to do our next video like in the same space, because I'm going to be out there we could do it on Thursday if you wanted.
How would we do that in the same space? Like actually.
Just go into your room. Just do it in the same room.
Well, all right, we can think about that. My office is like a nook in a wall, so that.
Or we could do it next Friday, and we could see and do lunch, and then I could fly back to Calgary, and then we can do it on Friday. Either way,
you are going to be in Toronto, which is fun. But I have to give you all the paperwork, by the way.
Yeah, we actually have to have our line sort of AGM, and I've got to make you sign corporate things. I don't know. Our lawyer told me I had to make you sign things.
Have the lawyer give me an envelope with those little stickies where it says sign here, and I'll.
Yeah, I don't understand how this paperwork works. It's not my job.
I have no idea what I'm signing. Okay. Thanks everybody. Happy birthday, Jen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.